What is going on, everyone? This is OB, aka 3X, welcoming you inside of episode 7 of the weekly upload update volume 2 for WWE 2K18. And we're just rolling right along here. I got some brand new creations for you that will be uploaded to Community Creations on PlayStation 4. Many of which, as I already alluded to in episode 6, have been done for probably weeks now, and I just have not gotten around to uploading them due to space constraints, having only 15 slots as of this video gold tier to be able to upload with, and then also the fact that I had to re-upload other creations and so on and so forth. So we're going to get caught up on all that before I focus on brand new creations to share with you guys. So that being said, I have the entire remainder of the XWA Diamond Division that I have not even uploaded yet, that I'm going to start to get into the process of handling over the course of the next couple of weeks. And you will see them all in these videos. That being said, we're going to kick things off here, as you can see, with one half of the one true tag team that I have in the XWA Diamond Division, Les Canadiennes. This, of course, being Esther, Laurent. Now we will scroll up to the face here, because, as is usual, when it is that I have a character that I've used the face of an actual person with, I will give you the side-by-side comparison. And in this case, Esther's face is based off of that of a former UFC round card girl, and she's also a fitness model, fitness figure, and so on and so forth, that goes by the name of Edith LaBelle. And she was most certainly one of my favorite ring girls back when she was working UFC. This was back in the, I guess you could call it the golden age or heyday of UFC. Back when you had guys like the Iceman, Chuck Liddell, and Randy Couture, and Quentin Rampage Jackson, guys like that, like some of the more popular fighters in the history of the UFC that are not named Conor McGregor. But yeah, you can pretty much see from the pictures there that she was definitely in shape. Still is. She has an Instagram that I follow, and yeah, you know, it's just a matter of keeping up with things. I had made her in the last generation of games, and this was for the EFED era of the XWA, and didn't really do much with her, so she kind of went on the back burner, the cutting room floor, if you will. And so then when I decided to create a true tag team along with her partner Jillian Priede, I figured it might as well be those two, considering the fact that they're both hailing from Canada. So kind of cliche, kind of convenient, and as a result, you have a pretty interesting pairing on the fact that they are traditional in the sense of wearing similar attires and operating as a cohesive unit and so on and so forth. So now that we have all that backstory out of the way, let's get into the actual attire itself here, starting with the brassiere. This here obviously is a Photoshop style that is emblazoned across the entirety, or the majority, I should say, of the brassiere, and then given the texture by way of the emboss function. You might find this actual design to be kind of familiar if you've downloaded my Drake Manning CAWS in the past, because it's the exact same style. I have a collection of them that are based loosely off of different national flags. In fact, you've already seen some of this work already on CAWS like America Weston and Natasha, and this is the Canadian equivalent. Obviously, we put the Canadian flag patch on there for added measure, and it gives it a really kind of national pride type of Team Canada type of feel to it, which was exactly the motivation that I was going for. Now we'll scroll down here to the tights, trunks, bikini, bottoms, whatever it is you want to call them. And obviously you've got the matching component in the form of the Canadian flag with a little variation in colors, kind of like a stained glass type of texture. This is actually a design that I pulled from Community Creations because I didn't want to use the plain old primitive flags that they have in game. I wanted to have something to it. I was actually hoping that somebody had downloaded all the Canadian flag style designs that were up on Community Creations in 2K17. Stuff like skulls with the Canadian flag emblazed on them and different textures and like painted patterns and things of that nature. But unfortunately, they aren't there. And I was too lazy to do any Google searches for the stuff myself, so I just took whatever it was that was already available and went with that. And this is the end result that you see. On the flip side, you have the same design as on the front of the brassiere with the style embossed and the Les Canadiennes name logo there. And then we'll scroll down here to the knee pads, and it's pretty much the same element again. The Photoshop style that I actually just textured onto a blank canvas to create the pattern here, if you will, and then just added the emboss function to give it texture, so it looks like it's actual kind of like fabric or texture on the knee pads, as opposed to it just being a flat pattern on them. And then once again you see a repeat of the Canadian flag on the top side of the boots there, that wraps around to the front for a nice little effect. I tried to push them all the way down, like wrap the entire bottom half of the boot with the flag, but it didn't look the way I wanted it to. I didn't want the maple leaf to be too elongated, so we went with the top design, and it actually helps in giving the boots that kind of like old school 1970s wrestler type of vibe to them. And so you have your complete look there for Esther Laurent's primary attire. At this present moment, as of me uploading this video and incidentally uploading both of Les Canadiennes to the Community Creations, they don't have any entrance scheme. That might change. I'm gonna work something out, and before you see them make their debut on an XWA show or match of some kind, they will have some kind of entrance attire. But at this point, I can't really think of anything. So she comes out in her ring gear, as you see here, pretty much. That being said, let's now take a look at the alternate attire. So the alternate attires for both Les Canadiennes, as you will see, is an interesting contrast and dynamic. Obviously, the same elements are being used, except for I changed the colors from red to blue. And the reason why, you can obviously see down low on the trunks here, is because I changed the Canadian national flag to the flag of her actual province of origin, that being the fact that Miss Laurent hails from Montreal, Quebec. So that right there is the Quebec flag, which is blue and white, as opposed to red and white of the Canadian flag. So we just basically matched her entire attire to match the Quebec flag. And basically we changed some variations there. The blue Canadian flag variation, again, is something else that I pulled from Community Creations, and we basically get the exact same effect, just with a color swap, so to speak, replacing the red with the blue. I intentionally kept the national flag patch on the brassiere the same color as the actual flag, because I wanted that to be a national representation, and then everything else is just kind of like a stylistic variation. And this in fact actually matches up with the secondary attire of her partner Jillian, for reasons that I will show you when it is that I get to showing her alternate attire. But yeah, that in a nutshell is Esther Laurent for 2015. Nope, let's try that again. That in a nutshell is Esther Laurent for 2018. And now we will have a look at her tag team partner, because like I said, this is a package deal that you get in here with these two. And so we have the 2K18 version of Esther's tag team partner here, and yet another member of Team Ginger. This of course is Jillian Priede, and yeah, like I said, traditional tag team. Every single part of her ring attire is absolutely identical to that of Esther's, as in every single element. That's the point of them being a traditional tag team, the fact that they wear the same gear. Now, I actually thought about giving Jillian long tights as a wee bit of a variation, but the problem again lied with the Canadian flag, because then she wound up looking kind of like a Power Ranger, or like how Lance Storm's attire looked like when he was wrestling in WWE, which is good for Lance Storm. It was a good look on him, but not so much a good look on Jillian. So in the end, I decided to keep their attires looking 100% identical to each other, aside from the one variation that you'll see in her alternate attire. And yeah, this is a really quick preview here. Probably the fastest one I've ever done in one of these weekly upload updates, because there's not really that much else to say about Miss Priede, aside from maybe a wee bit of, I guess, character history. A lot like Esther Laurent, I made her originally in the last generation of games. She was not a major character of mine, just one that I made just off the sake of making it, because, you know, I was toying around with different ideas and wanted to mess with different styles and so on and so forth. So she wound up originally being loosely based off of the character Elise Riggs from EA's SSX series of snowboarding games, specifically SSX Tricky, where some of Elise's alternate attires were like these full-on bodysuits, very form-fitting and anatomically correct bodysuits, her most popular of which being one that was actually based off of the Canadian flag, considering the fact that Elise was in fact Canadian. And that was basically what I did with Jillian when I first made her. She wore a full bodysuit that had the Canadian flag blasted all over it. Even had the short hair, because that was a hairstyle choice that you could make for Elise. You could like customize the characters to make them look how you wanted to. Different hairstyles, different accessories, clothing, that type of stuff. So basically she was like a converted version of Elise in a WWE wrestling game. Obviously there have been some changes between that version to this version, from hair color to personality, all the rest of that stuff. But yeah, just a little brief history for you there, as far as where Miss Priede came from and her point of origin in my head. So yeah, now let's go take a look at that alternate attire that I was talking about. So yeah, Jillian also has the blue alternate variation, and that correlates specifically with the flag of her province of origin within the great nation of Canada. Because Jillian originates from Halifax, Nova Scotia, and there on her tights is the flag of Nova Scotia, which is much like the flag of Quebec, predominantly blue and white. So it played out perfectly, almost eerily perfectly, in fact, in terms of me coming up with the design for the alternate just being a simple color swap between red and blue. I mean, you couldn't have planned this one out more perfectly if you tried. Just like on Esther's attire, everything else is pretty much identical, different variations of the designs in the exact same placements with the exception of the Nova Scotia flag there. And yeah, they look pretty damn good coming out to the ring together. And you can mix and match, even though I would highly recommend not mixing and matching. You know, if you're going to be running with one of them in the red gear, run with the other one in the red gear as well, and vice versa with the blue, just on the sake of them being a cohesive unit together with each other. Now, as far as their actual tag team entrance, basically go with the Bella Twins entrance, because that's the entrance that I use for them myself. And still haven't worked out what their tag team finisher is going to be, because there's so many new ones out there that I'm not really sure what it is that I want to use for them specifically. If I come up with anything between now and the remainder of me recording this video, I will superimpose it onto the screen right here for you to see and put onto the game yourselves when it is that you download them. Now, with that being said, like I said before, this is the only true actual tag team that I have in the Diamond Division. And that said, I do want to do more with them, considering the fact that I do actually have Diamond Tag Team Championships in the Diamond Division. And yeah, it's just a matter of, like I've said before, how it is that I get those belts off of Tadako Togo and Jamie Fury, because they are obviously elite level talents within the Diamond Division. So I gotta work something out. And yeah, we'll just have to figure that one out. That's still work in progress in my head. You'll just have to wait and see how that all gets executed in game form. But yeah, these guys, ladies, I should say, are not just for show. I'm going to be doing something with them. At this present moment, I just don't know what yet. But that's not here nor there. They will be available for you to do whatever it is that you want to do with them, so long as you do it with them together. That sounded kind of dirty, didn't it? So much for me monetizing this video. Hashtag not advertiser friendly. Up next on the list is Amber Gianni. And this right here is a creation of mine that has almost as much significance, I would say, as Riot and Sarah Warfield does. And there's some very specific reasons for that. I will scroll up to the face here to further give you that history, if you will. Also for the sake of side-by-side comparison here, because her face is based off of a glamour model that goes by the name of Aria Giovanni. Now, I first made Amber Gianni here back in the previous generation of WWE games, that being PlayStation 2 games, SmackDown vs. Raw series, and so on and so forth. And the significance of that fact is that back then, Amber Gianni was also based facially off of Aria Giovanni. As in, I actually took the time to meticulously use the face morphing feature in those games to make the CAWS face look as close to Area Giovanni's face as possible. And this was the first time that I had ever actually did that in her creation. And that's something that I ended up continuing to do for future creations like Victory Musashi and basically any other character that I have made from previous generations of games that are loosely based off of actual people, wrestlers, and so on. Amber Gianni here is the very first of that type of character that I made. Hence the significance of this character within my personal collection of characters. And not only that, on top of that, the significance that she has in terms of my roster is the fact that she was probably the most popular female character that I've ever created for any EFED. I had given the blessing for somebody else to use a character in an EFED that I was in because I didn't have enough time to run multiple characters. And needless to say, the personality of the character as it is that I described kind of hit off very, very, very well. And her reputation preceded her from there. And then when I converted the character over to the EFED that would become the XWA and gave the rights to that character, so to speak, to another handler, things really blew up from there. And I basically took the combination of those two performances, if you will, and embedded it into her overall personality, where she's kind of a sexy, sassy type of diva-ish character, quote unquote, but still has the ring skills and ring knowledge of someone who is not in that whole kind of sports entertainment type of vibe. So, that being said, she also kind of, sort of is in parallel to John Payne, where I mentioned in last week's video, John Payne was one of the primary students of Riot. Amber Gianni here is the primary student of Sarah Warfield. Now she, obviously, Sarah as in I'm talking about, has other students that have gone under her tutelage, but Miss Gianni here has the honor and distinction of being the first of such, even though her style overall is nothing close to Sarah's at all, because obviously Sarah's a big, strong, powerful lady, and Miss Gianni is more of the, how you say, voluptuous variety of woman. So, yeah. I've definitely evolved her style over the years to be something kind of more technically sound, but still has some elements of high flying and things of that nature. As far as movesets are concerned, I basically based her moveset loosely off of the wrestling family that is known to wear the exact same color scheme as Miss Gianni wears primarily. That being pink and black. That being the Hart family. Particularly Brett, but also a little bit of Tyson Kidd and Natalia sprinkled in for added measure and variation. So, yeah. Quite a bit of history going on with Miss Gianni here as well. That out of the way now, let's talk a little bit about the actual ring gear, which you will notice is a very, very, very different look from how it is that I've had her looking in the past. That actually has been converted over to her secondary attire. And as for the primary gear here, this here is me attempting to make a more traditional wrestling attire for her. And it's also kind of a variation of an attire that I had made for her for quite a while back in the previous generation of WWE games. In those games, I had her wearing a single shoulder type of singlet type of attire that I had cleverly enough nicknamed Singlet Lady, because it was kind of based off of the costumes that Beyonce and her dancers were wearing in the music video for Single Ladies. I unfortunately can't actually show you any footage of that video, because then I'll probably get content ID'd by Universal or Warner Music or whoever it is that owns the rights to any of Beyonce's music. But I can't put up a picture for you. Bam! There it is. And so I basically made a variation of that attire, pretty much. Even down to the single glove on one hand. It was a pretty good looking attire, if I must say so myself, and I really wanted to make a current generation variation of it. Unfortunately, I cannot get that type of look going on with any of the parts available here in 2K18, so we just kind of had to improvise using the old school Naomi singlet top here. And we'll scroll into the design here. This is basically kind of like a pinkish Day of the Dead type of skull design. You just obviously can't see the entirety of it because the cutouts on the ring gear kind of crop off the actual skull. But it made for a nice little trim effect going on with the rest of the attire. And then, as I usually do, I added the emboss function to give it added texture, and boom, here you go. That's the look. Along the back here, you have the Amber name logo with a Photoshop style on it. Might be a little too purplish, but it still matches in the color scheme, so it works. And I was just too lazy to try to tweak it to make it look more pinkish, because there's a whole lot of gradation going on there. And so that's a lot of editing that I just did not have the time to do, because I wanted to crank out these characters as fast as possible. That way I could get them out to you guys. That way I could start working on the shows. Anyway, scrolling up here to the elbow pads. This here kind of cutesy skull is a element that I used on her primary attire from last year that has now become her secondary attire this year. So we just added that on for accents. And then we'll scroll down to the knee pads. You basically see the same exact elements there. And then down on the boots, you actually see the full extent of the skull design that is cropped off on the top or outfit, if you will. So yeah, the typical wraparound type of effect that I put on my boots mostly, just to add a little more ornate decoration to them. And yeah, that's the primary attire for you. Very traditional looking, but still really decorative. And that was kind of the direction I wanted to go with Amber's primary attire here, just for the sake of making her look and seem a little bit more official in terms of her actual ring skill and ring presence within the grid, if you will, of the Diamond Division. Now let's look at the entrance gear. So again, in the sense of giving her a more traditional type of wrestling gear, almost kind of a Joshi type of vibe going on as well, I decided to give her a walkout robe. And yeah, you see the skull design there on the back. Pretty decorative and matching. And yeah, unfortunately I couldn't really do much with the Triple H logos there, but they kind of pass off as being kind of like specific designs to where they can still stand out even if I did color them. I tried to make them solid black and it just wasn't looking too good. And then aside from that fact, those specific colors also matched in with the same layer, if you will, as the collar and shoulder. So if I made those all black, then the rest of it would be all black too, and the point was that I wanted to make it pink and black. So we kind of have to go with what we got here. I also messed around with covering them up with the skulls, and didn't like how those looked either. So yeah, what you see is what you got here. And it's not that bad. It's definitely a good look overall, specifically as she's walking out with it. Kind of has that kind of regal type of Charlotte Flair-ish type of vibe to her. And yeah, the reason why I didn't actually use Charlotte Flair's robe specifically is because I have plans for that robe for a brand new character who has not actually yet been created. So yeah, we went with the next best thing. But I definitely wanted to have a robe for her as an entrance attire for this specific gear, as like I said, that was the type of direction that I wanted to go with this specific primary attire, just to make her feel and look more special, considering the significance that the core has, or the character has, both the core and the character, to me personally, and then also within the canon, if you will, of the XWA-niverse, so to speak. So that's gonna be the entrance gear. Now we'll take a look at the secondary attire. And so her secondary attire, like I said, is a variation of the primary attire that I had made for her for the past couple of games, 2K17 and 2K16. Scroll in a little bit, and the variations basically is the fact that majority of the designs are wrapped around. Specifically, if we look at the bikini here, you see again the Amber name logo that I added on there, and the cutesy skull once again. That used to be around the entire of the bottoms, but cut it off in half just for the sake of making room for the logo there, and it has a nice effect to it, that little combination there. I've actually also used that same kind of technique or layout, if you will, if you can recall, on Tadako Togo and Marisol. I think, yeah, both of them pretty much same style, obviously the difference being the logos themselves and the colors and everything like that. So you wouldn't really notice unless I told you, but I just told you, so now you know. And then we have a top, basically same idea. This is a design that I found off of a Google search. More cutesy skulls, pink and black going on here. Only the fact that this time it's wrapped around the entire brassiere, front and back, whereas before it just stretched out as far as I could. And yeah, you don't really see that much of a difference, except for the fact that I told you once again. Scrolling down here to the bottoms, you see the same cutesy skull logo going on in the knee pads that was on the primary attire. And we got the athletic shoes, pink and black in color. You'll notice, obviously, that the overall design and vibe of this attire matches that of Nikki Bella. So, yeah, that was incidental decision that I had went with back then, because at that point I wanted her to look a little bit more sportier than she had been. That was around the point where I was still trying to figure out her looks. Like each year I gave her different attires, and I wanted to kind of pinpoint one regular specific look that I could give her to make it easier on me when I was recreating her from year to year. And this was it up until this year, when I decided I wanted to try to make something that was based off of that Beyonce attire that I made from the previous generation of games that eventually turned into what became her primary attire. So now I finally have not just one finalized look for her, but now two. So it all works out in the end pretty well. And there you have it for Amber Gianni 2K18. I'm pretty sure there's quite a few out there who can't wait to get your hands on her. Literally. Yeah, I did it again, didn't I? Oh well. I don't make too much money off of this channel anyway, so the hell with monetization. Next up on the list, we have the 2018 version of Anjyl Andrews. And let's scroll into that logo there, because that's a pretty damn good logo. This is actually a logo that I made for her last year that definitely takes on a completely new role and feel altogether, thanks in part to the emboss function within the game. Truth be told, this is actually the very first card that I used that emboss function on, just for the sake of seeing how it is that it worked. And the rest is history. I turned around and just basically started reworking entire designs on previous CAWS that I had completed before I even made her, because it just worked so damn well that I just couldn't resist. So yeah, you'll see that exact same design frequently. It's pretty much the primary element on her ring gear. So you'll see it on the trunks, you'll see it on the knee pads, and you'll also see it wrapped in typical 3X fashion around the boots. Now I'll try to shorten up the character history here for Miss Andrews, because I've in detail explained this when it is that I first introduced her in last year's game. This here is actually an homage character, so to speak. In that very same eFed that I spoke of in my history of Amber Gianni, there existed a character there by the name of Anjyl, who was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, big-boobed vixen who hails from New York City. And she had quite a robust history to her. Started out as a stripper, spent many years as a valet and manager within this fed, and then went into training, became an active wrestler, and then wound up becoming a multiple-time champion within this fed, and arguably its most iconic character overall. And it was certainly a character that I had taken a liking to. I always enjoyed reading her characterizations and such, because this was mostly a text-based fed that used the WWE games to actually simulate the matches, which was also basically what it is that I used as a foundation for my eFed version of the XWA. This fed, called Virtual Wrestling Entertainment, was the catalyst of all that. And she was one of my favorite characters to read within this particular fed, so much so that I kind of, in secret, after that fed unfortunately closed down, made a version of her for my own personal game. And it was last year that I decided, you know what, this is kind of an honor, so to speak, to that fed and that character and the guys who are responsible for creating that character and portraying that character, to give her this kind of current generation personification here. So it's not necessarily the Anjyl from this fed. It is and it isn't, so to speak. Like, she's kind of taken to a different walk of life, so to speak, here, where she came out of retirement to come back into wrestling to scratch the competitive itch, and so hence she becomes a part of the XWA Diamond Division, because she hears that the XWA Diamonds are amongst the best female competitors in the world, and that's who it is that she wants to lock horns with. So that's basically the backstory in terms of the XWA version of her, using the rest of her backstory from VWE as kind of the foundation of it. So as a result of that and the standing that she had within her tenure within this other Fed, I've characterized her and classified her as a legend or boss level character in the same vein of Jamie Fury and Sarah Warfield and Riot, Yoshi Togo, guys and ladies of that nature. So she has a high standing, and as such will be considered to be one of the elite talents within the Diamond division also. So yeah, just once again my personal homage to one of my favorite E-Fed characters. And it's not actually the first time that I've done this. It's just the first time that I've made it public. And it probably won't be the last. Hint, hint. I do have plans on, after I've completed the entire XWA roster, making my own variations of other creations that I have encountered or experienced in the past from E-Feds and other car shows. And I'm actually, while I have this in my mind, going to be doing a collaboration with an artist who has done some original characters, original wrestling characters on his DeviantArt page. I'll give more details on that as soon as I'm close to actually getting it done. But yeah, you know who you are, and I'm pretty excited to get that stuff done too. This here in Anjyl is pretty much the same vein of what it is that I'm going to be doing there. So you now have yourself an idea of what it is that I can do and what it is that I intend on doing when it is that I start that project. So there you have it. And yeah, not much else to say here as far as Miss Andrews' attire is concerned, or at least the primary. So let's go ahead and have a look at her alternate. And the alternate really isn't that much of an alternate, isn't it? The only thing I really changed was the color scheme on the Anjyl logo. Added a little bit more of goldish tones here and there, and then gold trim where there was just that kind of silverish trim on the specific parts of her actual ring gear where they applied. Call it laziness, call it the fact that I really just didn't have that much of an alternate game plan for an alternate attire for her. But also it had a lot to do with the fact that the logo itself is just so damn good looking. I didn't want to do anything else to it, so we just went with the color swap. And also, conveniently enough, this color scheme kinda sorta also matches that of Sarah Warfield's. So if I ever wanted to pair those two up in another super team, if you will, then I could do that also. But then again, maybe not. If I do pair her up with anybody in the Diamond Division, it would probably be Amber Gianni, considering the fact that Amber, when it was that she was being used as a character in VWE, was most noted as a manager type of character, and Anjyl here was actually one of the wrestlers that she had managed. And they definitely had a very, how you say, friendly relationship with each other. Without getting into too much details that would probably really get my video demonetized. I'll just leave that to your imagination there, but yeah, they are pretty close friends. outside of the business, if you get my drift. So that would be a pretty good direction for me to go with the character, with both of them actually, considering the fact that at this point I didn't really have any story-based stuff for them. Maybe I do now. Maybe I have another tag team, and maybe I can finally think of ways to get those tag team title belts off of Tadako and Jamie Fury. The gears right now have officially begun spinning in my head as far as ideas are concerned. It's just that easy sometimes. So, yeah. There is no entrance gear for Miss Andrews at the moment. That's probably subject to change because I'm definitely probably going to want to put her in some kind of angelic-based type of entrance attire. That really depends on what it is that I can pull off, because I already know that there are certain parts that I'm not going to be able to combine because of the limitations that this game has compared to last year's game. So that will be a pending update in the future that I'll show off whenever it is that I complete it. Same way with less Canadiennes are concerned as far as entrance gears go. So you'll just get the ring gear, and that'll be what she walks out with. And yeah, work in progress as far as that goes. But as far as everything else goes, she's pretty much done and ready to go. And yeah, like I said, I definitely have fun creating her, and she's a physical depiction or a current generation depiction of one of my more favorite E-Fed characters. And yeah, I have a lot of fun making her, and it's a big honor to be able to do that as well. I have no idea if the person who created the character will ever watch these videos, but if in the event he or she ever does, you made a very, very kick-ass character, and I'm honored to be doing my part to keep her alive, so to speak, at least in a physical form. Up next, we have the second of 3/3 of Tyson Blackheart's Blood Diamonds faction. This, of course, is Cordelia, or should I say now the Red Queen Cordelia, as we scroll down to take a look at the design on the kick pads here. If you recall, when I showed off Sonia Robbins in previous weekly upload update, I kind of danced around with the idea of giving her the nickname the Red Queen. Well, obviously I did away with that, and primary reason because of that is because I decided I wanted to put that nickname on Cordelia. She's still very much a work in progress from a character standpoint. Obviously introduced her only last year, and eventually made her into a part of the group known as the Blood Diamonds, which serves as Tyson Blackheart's all-female extension to the Diamond Division, basically the female equivalent of his own villainy faction within the men's division. So obviously I have a backstory regarding the leader, Alexia Leone. I have something of a backstory regarding Arlene Driver, but I didn't have anything to work with as far as Cordelia is concerned. So this here is basically the starting point of that. I don't know whether I'm going to make it some kind of a code word or a nickname, a moniker. I have no idea. I just know that we're going with Red Queen in some way, shape, or form. And I'm going to build off of that over the course of telling her story, if you will. Now, the logo here is obviously an upside down crown with dripping blood. This is actually a design that is taken from a book, a series of books actually, which focuses on the Red Queen. aka the Queen of Hearts from the Alice in Wonderland book. Basically, a story variation using her as the main focus of the story. Kind of like in the same way Wicked, which was a Broadway play based off of a book, I believe, that the primary character was the Wicked Witch of the West from The Wizard of Oz. So basically taking a character from a classic book or some other form of medium and making it into a main character of his or her own specific story. So that's where the design here comes from. The QR logo that you see here on the side here, if my memory serves me correct, is actually the logo of a band, a goth metal band of the exact same name, that being Red Queen. So I just basically put all those elements together to create what it is that you see here. Now we will scroll up a little bit more to the actual ring gear, and this is actually a pretty clever play here I got going on. It's kind of in the same idea of Amber Gianni's primary attire, where things get kind of cropped off because of openings. So the artwork that you see here is something I pulled off of a Google search when I was doing a search for rose and skull designs, primarily to use on the character Callisto Rose, and I ended up finding a lot of good stuff. And obviously I was only going to be able to use maybe 2 to 3 of them for Callisto's attires themselves. This is one of those that didn't actually make it on Callisto's attire that I managed to succeed in using for somebody else. So I basically split it in half to where the top half of the design obviously appears on the brassiere, and then the bottom half appears on the trunks, and it gives off a kind of cropped off but yet complete looking effect overall on the overall attire. Also, the way that the bottoms look like kind of looks like you probably don't want to fool around with Cordelia here unless you want to get castrated in a very, very bloody and uncomfortable way. Yeah, leaving nothing to the imagination there. Anyway, we will flip to the back here, and you'll see a better look at that QR Red Queen design. The text itself I actually added on. That's a font that I had laying around, so just added that for emphasis, basically. And yeah, we got the alternating colors on the arms, that being the straps, and then the Natalia arm wraps with the spikes going on there. Those probably hurt a lot if she punches you with them. Luckily, Natalia's not that much of a striker, but Cordelia unfortunately is. If you recall, the last time she made an appearance was fighting to the backstage area against Sonia Robbins at XWA Ambition. That's going to be something I will be building on and have them battle it out a couple of times, leading into a conclusion. Obviously, she is, as I said before, a member of the Blood Diamonds, so she's going to play a role in that particular faction and their dealings within the Diamond Division over the course of XWA Girl Fights. How it is that will happen specifically, aside from her feuding with Sonia Robbins, once again, is a work in progress. But that's how it is when you're dealing with a brand spanking new character here. So that's the long and the short of her history and what it is, if anything, I have planned on doing for her in the context of the shows. As far as her moveset goes, she's cut very similar to that of Sonia Robbins, where she'll use a lot of martial arts based moves, striking, quick moves, agility, that type of thing. Actually completed her moveset before any of the new move packs came out. So there's probably a little bit of Rob Van Dam inspired in her moveset, not so much Aleister Black. That might change at some point, but I'm not going to do any tweaking to her moveset at this point of uploading her to Community Creations. But you are probably going to need DLC for her. You'll get the review on that at the end of the video like I've been doing the past couple of weeks. So, let's take a look at our alternate. So the alternate attire is just basically a variation. We went with the old school Naomi brassiere as opposed to the Bailey top. And we changed up the arm wraps to the actual wraps, along with the Luke Harper hand wraps to give off a kind of different effect, but still the same type of vibe, that being that much of a fighter as opposed to an actual wrestler, like someone who is more akin to using strikes in martial arts as opposed to grappling, even though she still does use grappling. This is a wrestling game after all, not a fighting game. So yeah, aside from that, the bottom half is pretty much identical to the primary attire, down to the logos and everything. Not really much variation necessary on her because I didn't want to do too much for that. She is what I would classify as a story character. So what that basically means is that I'm fleshing out her attires and looks and stuff like that as it is that I continue to make her and build on her backstory. So for the most part, what you see right now is just kind of a startup that might be elaborated on in future iterations of her, going from game to game, or I might just stick with this because I like it, and I, like in other cases, I'm just too lazy to make variations of attires from game to game. We'll just have to see how that goes. But for the most part, Cordelia here is pretty much complete for 2K18, at least for this early junction in 2K18. And yeah, we'll see what kind of damage she is able to do within the Diamond Division. And obviously that's going to be a lot because Tyson Blackheart wouldn't have put her on the take if he didn't know that she was capable of doing exactly that. And rounding out the Blood Diamonds, we have here the 2018 version of Arlene Driver. Now, I introduced Natasha late last year, and noticed the fact that appearance-wise, she looked a lot like Arlene Driver, of which Arlene Driver herself last year kind of sort of resembled, at least in attire and also somewhat in physique, that of the character Mother Russia from the Kick-Ass 2 film adaptation. So that prompted me actually to deciding to go about kind of reworking Arlene Driver's look for 2018 to make it look a little less like Natasha's, since she is the Russian, so it kind of made more sense for her to have that type of look and vibe to her. And this you see here is the end result. It's actually kind of closer to a character that is made by a digital artist named Terry P, who does this ongoing digital comic year by year called Women's Main Event. I'll have a link to his DeviantArt page down in the description there. But there is a character within this by the name of Kelly Houston, and I kind of alluded this when it is that I showed Arlene Driver last year, that there are some touches to her design and her persona that was a lot close to that of this character, Kelly Houston. And over the course of the years of me making this particular character, I kind of sort of tapped into other influences, more specifically, or more recently, that of Mother Russia. But this year, I kind of dialed it back a bit and went with some cues from the character Kelly Houston as far as differentiating her as in Arlene from Natasha. And you can see some of those touches, obviously, as I take a look here closer. On the brassiere, we have ourselves a barbed wire pattern that is also the same pattern that I've used on the top half of her body for the neck tattoo that you see here, as well as the arm tattoo. And then we have Beware in a metallic Photoshop style with some barbed wire effects going through it. You'll notice that barbed wire is a very, very prominent element throughout all of Miss Driver's appearance here. Even there on the chest, you can see a tattoo of a heart that is actually wrapped in barbed wire. There's also like some blood dripping effects going on down low. You obviously can't see it here because it's covered up by the top, but it's there. And then going down here, you see again on the trunks the same barbed wire effects design going across the front and on the back, along with the Beware once again along the back end there. So that became the universal theme, so to speak, for the reworking and the repackaging of Miss Driver. And I have to say that, in combination with the obvious body morphing that I managed to pull off on her, creates a very, very distinct look that even if you put her side by side with Natasha, which I will actually even do here, superimposing, you can definitely see there are some significant differences between them, despite the fact that they're pretty much cut from the same cloth. And that is a very, very big accomplishment on my part, because I honestly thought I was going to have a hard time coming up with ideas to rework Arlene here to make her look less like Natasha. And it actually wound up being a lot easier than I thought it would. So, go me. Yeah. Anyway, scroll down here to the boots. You'll see I have the rain boots going on, but I put the leather pattern on them. Kind of wanted to make them look like elevator boots or like long biker boots. That gets accentuated by the fact that I used my infamous belt buckle asset here, repeated twice on each side, to create that kind of goth biker-ish type boot effect. And yeah, it succeeds in doing the exact look that I wanted to have for her here. And that is basically a kind of like a female Terminator, almost. You'll definitely see that when you take a look at the entrance attire, even more so than here in the primary attire. So with the entrance gear, I got the kind of, I guess this is the Brutus the Barber Beefcake jacket, I don't know. But it's the only jacket that has the kind of crop off at the waist. I didn't want to use the regular biker jackets because those wrapped around a bit too much. Wanted to kind of show off a little bit more of the body. So we used that jacket. We put the leather finish on it. And because of that, the kind of tears or rips on it aren't as noticeable. They're still there, but you can't really pay attention to them that much. And even if you do, it's not that big of a deal. So we got that going. We put the barbed wire pattern across the front again, and then along the back side again we have it with the beware fonts once again for a bit of uniformity. I could emboss it just to add a little bit more effect. As a matter of fact, I probably am going to do that before I actually upload her to Community Creations. They will all be uploaded by the time you watch this video, so any changes that I'm suggesting here will be done by then. But just for the sake of making these patterns look a little more, I guess you could say, authentic, being against the leather, I'll go with that and emboss them just to add that effect. But yeah, the combination of the jacket with the shades going on here for the entrance definitely gives off that whole female Terminator vibe here, and that's pretty much the idea behind Arlene's character. I kind of alluded to it in the shows, the fact that Driver was the first female to be put under the financial influence, if you will, of Tyson Blackheart. So even though she's not the leader of the Blood Diamonds, she's actually the first person to have been operating under Blackheart's influence, so to speak, in attacking Sonia Robbins and setting off that whole series of events that eventually led to the establishing of the Blood Diamonds within the Diamond Division. And she will continue on that path of destruction, and where it is that she goes and who it is that she faces remains to be seen. But obviously there's the potential for some very, very good matches going down the road against a lot of other female competitors within the Diamond Division. So looking forward to playing that out. Anyway, let's take a quick look at the face piece right now, and you'll notice we have the kind of contrast color going on here. I basically took the hair dye feature and used that to color the shaved part of this particular hairstyle, because I didn't like how the fact that the kind of blonde stubble didn't show off as much or as good as I thought it would, and I didn't want it to look that way. I wanted to have kind of that contrast going on here, so we colored it dark, and the effects that it creates is 10 times better than it was by itself. Like I'm impressed myself how well that all worked out in the end, and you can definitely concur the fact that Miss Driver here probably has not looked any better. Like, this is another one of those cases where the 2018 version of a character is probably the best version of that character that I have ever done. And considering the fact that a lot of these characters I've made for years is saying something. And that's just testament to the additions of the features and things that you are capable of doing within the creation suite in 2K18. I only have a few small but significant gripes about creating characters in WWE games, of which you've already pretty much heard me bitch about plenty of times in previous videos, so there's no real need for me to elaborate on them. Anyway, let's take a look at her alternate attire now. So the alternate is just basically a variation using long tights as opposed to the typical short trunks that I use frequently on just about every other female character that I have. I'm of the personal belief that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And those trunks, you can do a lot with them depending on the designs that you use for them. And then there's also the fact that depending on the designs, sometimes they don't work as well on long tights like this as they do with short tights. And yeah, so we just have to improvise. But in this case, the logos do work. So I basically wrapped the barbed wire around the top half towards the waist, and then along the thighs we have the combination of the barbed wire and the beware font. So you have the similar effect to the primary attire, just in a different presentation. The brassiere and everything else are all pretty much the same as in attire number 1. So it's just really a cosmetic change, if anything. It's one of those situations where you don't really need to change that much. And again, just like in the case of Cordelia, I didn't want to get too detailed in variations of attires, because there's still things to work out, and I can make new attires based on how it is that I flesh the character out going forward. To which case, in reality, this character here, you don't really need to flesh out that much, because I don't want to say she's one-dimensional, but she basically has a set path in front of her. So you don't really need to get too ornate or detailed or fancy or anything like that. I mean, I could put her in a t-shirt and jeans and she'll still be doing the same thing that she's doing. So there's that. There's also the fact, unfortunately, that you can't use the Authors of Pain pants on females. So yeah, if that were a thing, I would probably have used those as opposed to these leather tights. But for whatever reason, they're not convertible over to female characters, and there are a lot of parts that aren't. And yeah, that's another minor gripe that I have. I mean, I guess it makes sense because, you know, some obvious articles of clothing have not been worn by women, so it's hard to convert them. But there was a point in time once, 2K17 I believe, and the last gen game, which was WWE 13, was it 14 or 15? I don't know, but the last version of a WWE game on PlayStation 2. A lot of the stuff there also you had could be placed on both male and female CAWS. Obviously that's not the case anymore. And yeah, I have a slight issue with that, but I understand the fact that there are limitations and, you know, logical reasons and so on and so forth. But it doesn't mean I still don't want this stuff, man. You know, I want to make my CAWS as best as they can possibly be. So yeah. Anyway, let's look at the entrance gear for attire number 2 now. So basically, same elements again. The combination of the jacket and shades, and with the long tights, it even more so has a kind of femme Terminator type of vibe to it than the primary attire. Like, you could give her an assault rifle and a shotgun and put her on a motorcycle and she would pass off as a Terminator, whatever model it is. T800, T6, I don't know. Whatever model of Terminator is the Arnold Schwarzenegger model, she would be the female variant of that. To which there's not ever been a female variation of a Terminator aside from that TX from the abysmal Rise of the Machines that has probably been retconned. And if it hasn't been retconned, it should be retconned, because oh gosh, that movie was terrible. All of the Terminator movies that were not directed by James Cameron, with the exception of Salvation, were terrible. A lot of people hate on Salvation. I kind of like that because Christian Bale and Sam Worthington are awesome actors, and they did a good job on that role in that movie. But that's all been retconned too, but I'm kind of going off on a tangent here. If there ever was a female Terminator, you could model it off of Arlene Driver, and it would be completely believable. And yes, that's a cool thing for me to say. So yeah, that is Arlene Driver 2K18. By far the best version of her I have made. And yeah, that will also do it for the Blood Diamonds. Hopefully you got... Hopefully you managed to grab Alexia Leone the 2 separate times that I uploaded her. So then you'll be able to round them out and complete the faction. And I will have the entrance information for them all collectively put on this part of the video here for your own personal reference. And now for the review of the current uploads on Community Creations. Let's take a look at the details. Cordelia will require DLC, particularly either that of the pre-order Kurt Angle pack or the Seen Enough pack. Amber Gianni requires no DLC to download, or VC purchases for that matter. All basically default baked in-game moves. The same thing is going to go for Anjyl Andrews. No DLC content required in order to download her to your game. As is the case with Arlene Driver. So everybody's going to be able to get those 3, regardless of whether you have the DLC or not. Esther Laurent, however, will require the same DLC that you're going to need in order to get Cordelia, because like I said before, I made their movesets before any of the new DLC came out. It was just the pre-order stuff that I was working with for them, so you'll need that in order to get them. And Jillian Priede will not require DLC, so 3 out of 5 will need any DLC in order to get, and 2, you will need either the Seen Enough or Kurt Angle packs, preferably both, in order to grab. As always, search tags are going to be 3XCAW, that is the number 3 followed by the letters XCAW, all one word, or XWA, as it is seen on your screen right there. Couple of disclaimers. As always, I will use whatever current DLC is relevant to make creations as I see fit. I paid for the stuff, I'm going to use it. So in some cases, if you don't have the most current DLC, you might not be able to get a hand on some of my creations. Sorry about that. And also, I have to add to that, for those who are wondering out there, this is PlayStation 4 content only. I do not have an Xbox, never had one, and I don't have the PC version of the game. And even if I did, I would not go through the trouble of having to recreate all this stuff for the PC version of the game. So, PlayStation 4 only. Sorry about that. That being said, scrolling down here, all 5 members of Katana are still available. Will be available for probably another week or so. The next CAWS to be replaced will be Christian Phoenix and Xander Xavier Luther, and then probably Katana after that, as I continue to upload the remainder of the XWA Diamond Division. I just want to get all that stuff out as fast as possible and give everyone a chance to get them, and then I will refocus on completing the men's roster and go from there. So you have yourself a brief little timeline or a roadmap, if you will, of what is to come in future weekly update videos and relevant content thereof. So that all being said, we will put this one to a close. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to my channel if you have not already. I do videos like this every week, every other week, or whenever it is that I get around to it, in some cases, as well as my Core University tutorial videos, giving tips and tricks for the creation suite for these WWE games. And then of course there is my XWA wrestling show itself. Also, if you are already subscribed, thank you very much. Make sure that you hit the notification button, that little bell right next to the subscribe button. That way you are informed the moment any of said content is made available for public viewing. Now that that's all out of the way, thanks once again for watching. Thanks for your continued support over these months and years. And that even includes that one person who apparently has subscribed and has notifications active solely for the purpose of disliking my videos the moment it is that I make them public. I appreciate you. That takes some real effort and commitment to do. I respect that. Oh boy, yeah. Just have to get that special shout out there. Anyway, that'll do it. Until the next time, this is Obi signing off. See ya!